Hello and welcome to the next Sikhism Beliefs and Teachings lesson. Today we are going to look a little bit deeper into this concept of oneness, of Seva, and the Sangha in general. So the learning objectives for today is to try and understand Sikh teachings about equality and human worth, try and define Seva and Sangha a little bit more detail about what they actually are, sort of interpret related quotations from various different sources of authority, sort of focusing more on the Guru Granth Sahib, but again, we'll talk about that in a future lesson. Applying then those beliefs to an exam style question. Now, there are two exam questions in here to have a go at yourselves. Do feel free with any of those exam questions to have a go at writing them and send them to me. I'm happy to mark them and give you feedback if it's an area that you're struggling with. So let's jump straight into it then and looking at sort of what equality looks like within Sikhism. So as we sort of spoke about a little bit last lesson, that everybody is equal irregardless of the sort of their caste, the gender, or their status within society. And so we spoke a little bit on how the Hindu caste system was viewed by Sikhs, and here we see that actually Guru Nanak fully just rejects it. So when we see that Guru Nanak was someone who was against the caste system, that's definitely a guidance for a lot of Sikhs, because they want to try and live in a similar sort of style as Guru Nanak, as someone who is very committed to his faith. Now, we looked at this quotation last lesson, where we sort of said, recognize the Lord's light with all. There's no classes or castes, in the hereafter. But let's have a think about how would this affect how Sikhs would treat others. And the answer would be that ultimately they would want to treat everybody with kindness and love, because if everybody is equal, you'd have to treat them in a very similar way that you would yourself would want to be treated. So you'd have to show them kindness and love and respect, regardless of who they are or what they've done. So this idea then that everybody is equal, it builds a society. There are no outsiders. Everybody is exactly the same and is equal in the eyes of everyone else within the room. So an example of where this might be seen is within the Langar. Now, we spoke again a little bit about this last lesson, but as we said, it's where every Gurdwara sort of provides free food for everybody. It's these in some parts of the world where the Gurdwaras are slightly larger. So in places in India, for example, they have these huge kitchens where they provide huge amounts of food for everybody. It's this idea then of everybody is equal within society. It doesn't matter who you are, everybody is welcome to take part in feasting from this kitchen. Everyone sits together, and it breaks down this idea of barriers of class or wealth. You could have an extremely rich person sitting next to somebody who has absolutely nothing. Everybody sits together because they're all equal. They are all part of the same community. They're all on the same journey. So therefore, they are all going to be able to sort of be part of this society together. So we see here again from the Guru Granth Sahib this idea that the Langar has been opened and its supplies will never run short. So as long as it is focused on being like the true Langar, it will always have supplies, because there is always room for generosity, always room to sort of be there to help others, and people want to support that. So, that's why the supplies never run short, is because people want to support a cause like that. So just as a reminder, then the Langar is just that name of the community kitchen itself. It's not an action they do necessarily. The Langar is just the actual kitchen found within the Gurdwara. Now, this concept of Seva is something that is slightly harder to achieve as a human being. There's this idea of selfless service done for others without reward. Now, there's this constant argument as, is there ever truly a selfless good deed? But the argument would be that as long as you are doing an action that goes against the intentions of receiving a reward, there shouldn't be a problem with you sort of doing something without the intention of any sort of reward. That would be seen as good enough as a selfless action. So there are three main types of selfless services that can be good. You have tan, which is the sort of physical things, so that could be cooking for someone or helping someone when they fall over. You have man, which is a more sort of mental sort of selfless service, so where you may support someone emotionally, or you might get them to question something they're doing within their life that is wrong. And then Dan, this idea of materialistic things. You want to be able to give away your stuff to other people, but you might also want to encourage them to not care so much about their material wealth as well. But there might be times where people need particular things that you have that you can just give away to someone, as a sort of a way to sort of help others within your community. So we see here, one who performs self-service shall attain liberation. It's this idea that as long as you are performing seva, you are going to have the opportunity to reach mukti and to escape from samsara. These three different ways then of performing seva give Sikhs a wide opportunity to be able to achieve mukti. Now, I want you to have a think for yourself. Can you think of a separate example of Tan, Man, and Dan sort of seva? And I would like you then to have that someone check that. You can either post them in the comments of this video, where I can check it, or have someone at home to check it, see if they would agree that would be a way to physically help someone, mentally help someone, and then materially help someone. So have a go at trying that as well and see how you get on. Being able to understand what it looks like in practice helps you understand why it is they would want to do those things in the first place. So it's a good little exercise to have a go at. Now, the why part of it then, of why are they going to bother doing any of this, is, well, A, it's a practical expression of equality and humility, this idea that as individuals we are no better than anyone else, and therefore if we have things or have opportunities to help others, we should do so, because there may be times when we also need help, where we also need sort of support from the people around us. And if we constantly say no to people, we can't expect them then to be there for us when we need them. It helps sort of people overcome their haumai, which we spoke about a little bit last lesson, which allows their soul to become closer to reuniting with God. So when they're wanting to connect with the Wahe Guru, they're going to have that opportunity to do so more if they are practicing seva, if they're living in that sort of way of life. Here we see then, again, a similar quote that through selfless service, eternal peace is obtained. This idea that we have this opportunity to escape. We can go and live in eternal peace, sort of reconnected then with God. Again, we do have this keyword haumai. If you haven't looked at last lesson yet and you want a little bit of a better definition, it literally just means your ego or being self-centered in your thoughts. We're now going to have a go at answering a 6-mark question. Now, this may differ depending on exam boards. This is more focused towards a sort of an AQA or potentially an OCR sort of a question rather than EdXL or WJC. If I've got that wrong, do feel free to have a look at the exam board mastery sort of course within the RS section. It goes through the expectations of all the different exam boards. So if you're not sure which one you're doing, do double check with your school. Or whoever it is that's sort of providing you with the exam sort of materials, and then make sure they have a look at those lessons as well to sort of help you out, knowing exactly which questions are for which. To start off with then, we need to break down the question. It says, explain 2 Sikh beliefs about seva, so we need to make sure that we're giving a point. Now, our point could be a definition of the key word. So one belief about seva is that it is selfless, this sort of selfless good deeds. We want to then give evidence and reference it. So there's actually 2 marks available here, one for the quotation, one then for referencing it. The 4th mark comes in when we give our explanation. Now we need to make sure that this is then linking back to the question, so that your actions, these selfless good deeds, allow you to escape samsara. So this idea that if you do selfless good deeds, you can then escape from samsara. Another point that you might want to use is talking about the fact that there are 3 different types of seva. Now, you could focus on one particularly, or you can focus on all 3 as one point. The reason why I haven't given you the points in sort of full sentences is so you've got a little bit of leeway in terms of what it is that you put in, because it might be that you decide that you want to just use the two of the 3 types of seva as your 2 points and just defining them in those moments, which also could absolutely work. The sixth mark then would be then defining those terms. So depending on the exam board that you're with, just stating those terms could be enough to give you the point, and then giving them a definition could be enough to give you an explanation. Depending on the exam board, though, is going to determine how much detail you want to put in. AQA are a little bit more lenient in terms of allowing sort of shorter answers. So if you're in an AQA, just having those basic definitions in there in short, snappy sentences is going to be enough to get you those 6 marks. Under a different exam board, though, you may want to try and give a little bit more depth to your answer, just to sort of guarantee those 6 marks and to show that you have clearly thought through everything within this answer. We now need to look at the Sangha. Now, this is the second thing that we looked at last lesson in a little bit of detail, but not quite enough, that I thought we would cover in a little bit more for you. So this is being in the company of the sort of spiritually minded people, and it helps sort of personal growth. So if you are someone who wants to develop spiritually, you go and join the Sangha, this sort of holy congregation of people, and it's going to help you on your own spiritual journey. Being surrounded by like-minded people helps you sort of develop your own thoughts and helps you sort of push yourself further to those sorts of next stages of spirituality within this case. Now, because it sort of encourages this idea of shared values, worship and community support, it makes it really hard to fall astray from the correct path. If you're constantly engaged within the Sangha, you're going to constantly be engaged with the Waheguru. You're going to constantly be engaged with the community and doing those good actions that we spoke about just a moment ago. So in doing those things and being part of that community, you're going to be able to live a really good, positive life, which could allow you to reach mukti and escape from the cycle of rebirth. Now, we see here again in the Guru Granth Sahib that joining the Satsanga, the mind becomes immaculate. This idea that if you are surrounded by everybody having perfect thoughts and everyone being loving and kind and generous and caring, you know, your mind is going to adopt those thoughts and bring them into yourself. And so sort of falling away from that path is going to be a real challenge to do. Now, the Sangha, as we said then, is just a holy congregation of believers, if you want a really basic definition there. So I want you to have a think again about how the Sangha can help us develop spiritually. Now, if you're watching this video with someone, I would like you to turn to them and have a go at actually telling them how the Sangha can help us develop spiritually. There's been a few answers that we've sort of spoken about a little bit right now, but feel free to have a go writing them down. If you want to send them to me to check with me that you have understood this, then feel free to do so. Otherwise, feel free to show your teachers the notes that you've made and see what they say. But effectively, if you have come across the lines of something like being surrounded by like-minded individuals sort of keeps your mind immaculate, keeps your mind focused on the right things, then absolutely you have understood the purpose of the Sangha. Now, human life generally, we need to understand that human birth is actually really rare within the cycle of samsara. Now, this is a common belief held amongst many of the Eastern faiths. When you consider Hinduism and Buddhism, this idea of human rebirth is a real challenge to achieve. So it's a really precious opportunity to be able to reach mukti. The purpose of our life then is to try and reunite our soul with the Waheguru, to sort of rejoin that greater consciousness that exists, so allowing our soul to spiritually reconnect with the greater mass that is the Waheguru. This means that actually our focus in our human lives should be trying to achieve mukti as much as humanly possible. Now we see here this idea from again the Guru Granth Sahib, that the human body has been given to you, and it gives you an opportunity then to meet the Lord. So the fact that it has been given to you, it's a really crucial opportunity that you have to grasp with both hands, and it will allow you then to meet the Lord if you use this life carefully. Here we then also have a definition of the word mukti. If you didn't already have it from last lesson, I thought I'd give you another opportunity to copy it down if you haven't seen that one yet. Now, linking the main beliefs then, what we need to understand is that if there's one God, it means that all people are also equal, because remember, God is everything that exists is manifestations of that one God, so therefore everything is part of that one God, therefore we must serve and help every single person. So we can see how the beliefs start to intertwine together. We then have this idea of equality. And through equality, we should do Seva, which is this selfless self-actions. Through being part of the Sangha, we get an opportunity to actually perform those actions with people within the community. And by doing all of these ideas, we can then achieve mukti. It just goes to show that the belief system that is there is interconnected. Every belief has a purpose, isn't that? There's no beliefs in there that you sort of think, well, why is that there? Why are they believing in these things? What's the point? It allows you to sort of go from one step to the next to the next. Now, we do also have this idea of inner and outer faith, because depending on where you are in the world, practicing Sikhism could be either really, really easy or actually quite challenging. So you have the Simran, which is the meditation, it's the internal devotion, whilst you have then Seva, which is more of the external, doing things for other people. Now, Sikhism, you want to try and have a balance of both Simran and Seva. Your spiritual growth is going to require the opportunity to yes, do lots of actions, but if you're constantly doing that, you're not actually having time to focus and think about what it is that you're doing. So that opportunity to perform Simran is really, really crucial. Now, to serve the true guru, you are then going to find peace. It's this idea that actually through doing these actions and through meditating, you're going to find that peace, because meditation is a very peaceful thing. You are going to be able to, focus a little bit more clearly and think about what actions are actually crucial. So having a balance of the two really does allow you to grow in the best way possible. What I thought we'd do here is I've given you then a list of some of the key words, and I've mixed up the definitions here. Have a go. Feel free to see if you can match up the correct definitions with the correct keywords. Pause the video here, and we'll go through the answers in 3, 2, and 1. Here are the answers then. That's how they should have been matched up. So C, did you get them right? Did you get 6 out of 6? Put a comment in this video if you managed it. We then come on to looking at some of the longer exam questions, specifically more of these sorts of 12 or 15 mark answers. Now, what I thought we'd do is just sort of go through some of the basic things that you want to include, as well as some key tips for you in terms of how to be successful in this exam. So first things first, you want to make sure that you have arguments for the statement. Now, in this case, you want to make sure you have arguments for Seva. Now, I've given you a reference there to quotations that we used earlier in the lesson, as well as then talking a little bit about the community impact, the way that this can sort of impact the lives of other people. So not only do you want to have one side of the argument, you're going to want to make 2 or 3 points based on this particular side, so just focusing on Seva. You're then going to want 2 or 3 points arguing for meditation. Again, I've given you reference to some quotations you might want to use, as well as sort of key ideas, this idea of finding that inner peace. So you have to effectively create 2 different sides of the argument and break them out into a little bit more depth before then reaching some sort of justified conclusion using the beliefs used previously within your answer. So when it comes to the conclusion, you're not having to try and think of new points to create. You can just recycle them from the paragraph before. Some key tips then. You want to be spending about 15 to 20 minutes writing. Now, it's a bit of a rough guide because how much time you have on these questions is purely determined by the other questions that have come before it. If you spend less time on the sort of smaller questions, that frees up more time for you to spend a little bit longer on these answers. That allows you to go into a little bit more depth. You want to make sure that you're evaluating throughout. So using language like, this is a strong argument because, this is a weak argument because. By using those sorts of languages, you're going to be able to access that tier 4 sort of level of marking, which is a sort of your 10 to 12 marks. If you can do that consistently after each point, there's no reason why they wouldn't be able to give you 12 out of 12. It would really stand out to the eye of somebody marking the exam. Now, one thing that does need to be said is that this does not need to be a balanced argument. If you are trying too hard to make it a balanced argument, it can then become very difficult to say which side is stronger or which side is weaker. If you know that you're someone who struggles with those issues and you're not quite sure on how to make one side look stronger or one side look weaker, by having an imbalanced argument and having more points on one side than the other, that makes it more convincing, because an argument that you can say more about is one that is more convincing. So when it then comes to writing your conclusion, you don't have to think about what your actual opinion is. You can just go for whichever side has more points. And that can work, because at the end of the day, the person marking your exam doesn't actually care about the opinion that you give. As long as it is within answering the question, that's all they really care about. If it then becomes something that is either a very minority belief, or a belief that would be not supported by every Sikh, then that would be absolutely fine as well. Now, one other bit that I would say is actually try and find your evidence first. Think about what quotations that you can use. Now, the reason I say you should do this is because it's really easy to think of a really great point that you want to use. However, if there is no quotation that is going to support that point, you're not going to be able to put as many quotations or as many sources of authority within your answer. So find your sources of authority first. You can then pull the points out of those sources of authority. That way you always have a bit of evidence that links to a point. If you think of your point first, you're not guaranteed to always find a bit of evidence to directly link. So let's have a final check then of everything that we have done today. By now, you should be able to understand some of the Sikh teachings about equality and human worth, the fact that everybody is equal. You should be able to be confident in defining Seva and Sangha. You should be able to start to interpret some of those quotes that we used earlier in the lesson, as well as then being able to apply those to exam-style questions. Now, please do, guys, if you want to have a go at answering the questions and you want to send them over to me for feedback, I am more than happy to do so. I am an exam marker for AQA, so that is my standard exam board. However, if you want me to mark something from a different exam board, I do have access to their mark schemes and how they work. So do feel free, it doesn't matter what exam board you are working with, I'm happy to mark any of it if you are doing stuff over the holidays, or if you're doing stuff at home and you don't have access to your teachers straight away. Thank you very much then, guys. I will see you in the next lesson. Thank you very much.